Exar Kuan's decision to wield a blue lightsaber, even after falling to the dark side and embracing the ways of the Sith, is a complex statement of his unique philosophy and personality. Unlike many Sith lords in the expanded universe who used synthetic red crystals as a mark of their allegiance to Sith traditions, Kuan deliberately chose to keep and modify his Jedi weapon. This choice reflects his arrogance, manipulation, and rejection of convention, setting him apart from other Sith and solidifying his identity as a trailblazer of dark power. The Sith Order traditionally used synthetic red crystals in their lightsabers, a practice that symbolized their defiance of natural harmony and their mastery over the Force. Sith viewed these synthetic crystals as superior, representing their philosophy of dominance and control. For Exar Kuan, however, adhering to this tradition was unnecessary. By continuing to wield his Jedi lightsaber, Kuan displayed his arrogance and hubris, believing himself superior to the traditions of both the Jedi and the Sith. To Kuan, his power came from his mastery of the Force and his intellect, not from the symbolism of a red blade. He saw no need to rely on the artificial crystals favored by the Sith because he considered himself beyond the limitations of tradition. Kuan's choice to retain his blue lightsaber was also a calculated act of manipulation. The galaxy at large viewed blue lightsabers as symbols of the Jedi Order, of peace, and of justice. By wielding a blue blade, Kuan could deceive the general public, making them believe he was still a Jedi. This deception allowed him to maintain a veneer of legitimacy and trust while secretly pursuing his dark ambitions. Kuan understood the power of symbols and weaponized the public's perception of the Jedi to further his own ends. This manipulation not only highlights his cunning but also underscores his willingness to exploit the ideals he once swore to uphold. One of the core tenets of the Sith philosophy is the idea of breaking one's chains, of casting off the limitations imposed by others to achieve ultimate freedom and power. By rejecting the Sith tradition of wielding a red lightsaber, Kuan demonstrated his independence and his belief in forging his own path. For Kuan, adherence to tradition was a weakness, a constraint that bound others to outdated ideals. His decision to wield a blue blade was a declaration of his autonomy, a statement that he was not bound by the expectations of the Sith Order or the Jedi. In this way, Kuan's lightsaber became a symbol of his rejection of all authority but his own. Exar Kuan's decision to keep his Jedi lightsaber was also a reflection of his unparalleled arrogance. Kuan believed himself to be the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, capable of mastering both light and dark without being bound by the limitations of either. By continuing to use a weapon associated with the Jedi, Kuan displayed his belief that he did not need to conform to Sith traditions to prove his power. To him, the lightsaber itself was a mere tool, and his mastery over it, rather than its color or construction, was what truly mattered. This hubris ultimately became one of Kuan's defining traits, driving him to greater heights of power but also to his eventual downfall. Kuan's choice to wield a blue lightsaber after falling to the dark side serves as a lasting symbol of his individuality and his rejection of tradition. It set him apart from other Sith lords, who often sought to prove their allegiance through their adherence to Sith customs. Kuan's modified lightsaber, a double-bladed weapon of unparalleled lethality, further cemented his status as a pioneer in both combat and philosophy. By forging his own path, Kuan left a legacy that influenced Sith and Jedi alike, showing that true power lies in the ability to transcend boundaries and redefine expectations. Exar Kuan's decision to forgo a red lightsaber and retain his Jedi weapon cemented his legacy as one of the most formidable and unique Sith lords in galactic history. It demonstrated his disdain for tradition, his belief in his own superiority, and his willingness to challenge both Jedi and Sith conventions. His actions sent a clear message to the galaxy. Exar Kuan was a force to be reckoned with, unconstrained by the expectations of any order. By the time Kuin began his war against the Jedi, his blue lightsaber had become an unmistakable symbol of his identity. It represented his arrogance, his mastery of the Force, and his unrelenting ambition. In rejecting the Sith tradition of constructing a red lightsaber, Kuin carved his own path, embodying the Sith philosophy of breaking one's chains to achieve ultimate power. Exar Kuin's decision not to use a red lightsaber was far more than a practical or aesthetic choice. It was a declaration of his arrogance, independence, and unique philosophy. By wielding his Jedi weapon, Kuin displayed his belief in his own superiority and his rejection of both Jedi and Sith traditions. His blue lightsaber became a tool of manipulation, a symbol of his defiance, and a reflection of his hubris. In breaking with tradition, Kuin exemplified the Sith ideal of breaking one's chains, forging a legacy that remains one of the most iconic and complex in the history of the Sith Order. Exar Kuin's rejection of tradition and defiant use of his blue Jedi lightsaber not only defined his own identity as a Sith Lord but also influenced his apprentice, Ulic Qel-Droma. Ulic, despite being seduced by the dark side and fully committing to the Sith cause, similarly chose to keep and wield his Jedi lightsaber rather than constructing a new weapon with a synthetic red crystal. This decision was not coincidental. It reflected the philosophical influence of his master and his shared sense of arrogance and superiority. For Ulic, like Kuin, the retention of his Jedi weapon symbolized his belief in his own power and his rejection of conventional Sith practices. Ulic Qel-Droma's journey to the dark side paralleled Kuin's in many ways. Initially a Jedi Knight of great promise, Ulic fell to the dark side after infiltrating the Kroth, a Sith cult, in an ill-fated attempt to destroy them from within. His fall was marked by his growing hubris, the loss of his moral compass, and his eventual alliance with Kuin, who elevated him to the rank of Sith apprentice. Despite his transformation into a Sith Lord, Ulic continued to wield the same lightsaber he had used as a Jedi. This choice mirrored Kuin's rejection of Sith traditions and demonstrated Ulic's belief in his own superiority. Ulic, like his master, saw no need to conform to the expectations of the Sith Order. His lightsaber remained a symbol of his skill and power, a reminder of his Jedi past that he had now corrupted and weaponized in service of the dark side. Exar Kuin's influence on Ulic extended beyond combat and strategy. It shaped his very identity as a Sith. Kuin's disdain for tradition and his emphasis on individuality resonated with Ulic, who also saw himself as a being of unparalleled power. Kuin's rejection of the red lightsaber was a philosophical statement, one that Ulic adopted as he forged his own path within the Sith Order. By keeping his Jedi weapon, Ulic displayed the same arrogance and hubris that defined his master. Like Kuin, Ulic believed that his strength and connection to the Force transcended the need for symbolism or adherence to Sith conventions. His lightsaber became a tool of irony, wielded by a man who had turned against everything it was meant to represent. It was a deliberate act of defiance, a declaration that he was no ordinary Sith, but a warrior whose power exceeded the boundaries of tradition. Just as Kuin's use of a blue lightsaber allowed him to manipulate public perception, Ulic's retention of his blade served a similar purpose. To the galaxy, the lightsaber was a symbol of the Jedi Order, associated with peace, justice, and heroism. By wielding it as a Sith, Ulic was able to deceive and manipulate those who still saw him as a Jedi Knight. This deception allowed him to maintain influence and control, furthering the goals of the Sith while concealing his true nature. Additionally, the use of his Jedi lightsaber represented a personal triumph over the Jedi Order. Every strike he made with the weapon was a symbolic gesture of his rejection of their ideals and his corruption of their values. In Ulic's hands, the blade became a weapon of terror, wielded by a fallen Jedi who had embraced the dark side. Ulic Qel-Droma's decision to retain his Jedi lightsaber inspired by Exar Kuen's own philosophy, reinforced the notion of breaking chains and forging one's own path, core tenets of Sith ideology. By rejecting the use of a red lightsaber, Ulic, like Kuen, declared his independence from the constraints of tradition. Their actions demonstrated that true power lay not in adherence to symbolism but in the mastery of the Force and the willingness to challenge conventions. This legacy of defiance became a hallmark of both Kuen and Ulic, setting them apart from other Sith Lords who adhered more strictly to the traditions of the Sith Order. Their choices to wield Jedi weapons as Sith Lords were acts of profound symbolism, representing their rejection of both Jedi and Sith orthodoxy in favor of a philosophy rooted in personal power and ambition. Exar Kuen's rejection of the red lightsaber and his embrace of his blue Jedi weapon not only defined his own identity as a Sith Lord but also influenced his apprentice, Ulic Qel-Droma. Ulic's decision to retain his green Jedi lightsaber after falling to the dark side reflected the same arrogance, defiance, and sense of superiority that characterized his master. Together, Kuen and Ulic rejected the traditions of the Sith Order, declaring their independence and forging their own paths as Dark Lords. Their weapons became symbols of their unique philosophies and their shared belief in the ultimate supremacy of personal power over tradition. In doing so, they left a legacy that reshaped what it meant to be a Sith and stood as a testament to their enduring influence on the galaxy.